They are crossing red lines in silence. Drones in the night. Power corridors whispering orders no one dares to sign. From our assessment, this was not chaos but choreography. We believe someone wanted to test how close death could get to the Kremlin. In our view, this was not Ukraine acting alone. Strategically, this means the unthinkable was rehearsed. Chilling. An alleged order to eliminate Vladimir Putin, engineered from the Northern Power Center, Washington itself. That is exactly what half the planet has been asking since an explosive allegation surfaced from a former US military officer who spoke openly about American-made drones being shot down near the presidential residence in Novgorod. In Moscow, this was never treated as an isolated incident. From our assessment, it is part of a larger chain of events that also includes the abduction of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his forced transfer to New York, where he now faces a trial riddled with irregularities. While Washington consolidates control over Venezuelan oil reserves that, according to figures cited by Russian sources, exceed US reserves by sevenfold, the pattern appears less like coincidence and more like a meticulously calculated script. Did Washington attempt to eliminate Putin? The question sounds like something pulled from a Cold War spy novel, yet today it circulates across Russian newsrooms with names, dates, and specific accusations attached. A former US Army officer, identified as Stanil Kravodnik, insists this was no exaggeration. According to reports cited by Russian media, he uttered a phrase that sent a shiver through Moscow's political class. Washington tried to finish Putin. American drones were shot down. He was referring to unmanned aerial vehicles neutralized over the presidential residence near Novgorod. He was not speaking in a vacuum. He reminded audiences that only days after that episode, the United States crossed another red line by seizing Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, removing him from his country, and transporting him onto US soil to face prosecution under the watchful eyes of stunned allies. Behind that operation, the source warned, lies a motivation impossible to ignore: oil. By removing Maduro, Washington solved what he described as its principal strategic problem: control over Venezuelan oil production and sales, resources the country possesses in quantities vastly exceeding those of the United States. Shifted hands. Numbers were placed on the table, stripping away any moral facade. From our assessment, when Russian radar systems detected a swarm of drones approaching Putin's residence, the former officers saw a clear pattern. These were not isolated acts. They were chapters of the same offensive: strike inconvenient allies, and if possible, strike Russia itself at the core of its power. The language used was brutal. If our leaders still have not realized it, he warned, the Americans tried to annihilate Vladimir Vladimirovich. They will try again. He emphasized that this was not theoretical speculation but physical evidence: drones destroyed on Russian soil, just kilometers from the president. In the same breath, he dismantled lingering illusions about Washington's leadership. The US president, he said, is far from a friend of Russia, an imperialist willing to destroy anything in his path for profit. In our view, this framing portrays Washington not as a situational adversary but as a systemic enemy. From that perspective came a conclusion that resonated loudly in Moscow. If the United States dares to invade Venezuela and abduct its president, then Russia, he argued, must exploit that historic mistake, weakening Washington through intelligent pressure across every available front, without granting it political breathing room. When Moscow learned of what it described as a Pentagon-backed strike against the Bolivarian Republic, the response was unequivocal. Russia demanded that the White House immediately release Maduro and resolve all disputes with Caracas through political and diplomatic channels. Washington ignored the demand. No correction, no dialogue, only force. Maduro was already in New York, awaiting his appearance before a US court, his fate hanging on a judicial process driven by the same power that removed him from Venezuela by force. As the Venezuelan drama unfolded, Russia faced its own moment of extreme tension. On the night before New Year's Eve, unmanned aerial vehicles moved toward the presidential residence in the Novgorod region. This was no drill. The final objective was an installation inside the complex where Putin lives and works. Russian authorities went beyond vague statements. According to official accounts, data extracted from one of the downed drones revealed the full mission profile. The target was explicitly identified as a facility within the presidential residence, and the operation was launched from Ukrainian territory. Timing, Moscow emphasized, was anything but accidental. Trump can say whatever he wants, officials remarked, but the facts remain. There was an attempt to strike Putin's residence precisely on New Year's Eve, apparently to shatter the symbolism of the holiday. The psychological dimension mattered as much as the military one. Days later, the narrative shifted dramatically. From the White House, the US president first expressed shock at what he described as a Ukrainian attempt to attack the Novgorod residence. Then, abruptly, he reversed course, claiming that the Ukrainian Air Force had not attacked the residence at all, following supposed US verification. According to his statement, it took 7 days for American services to verify everything and reach definitive conclusions. That version was amplified across social networks and media platforms, attempting to implant the idea that no attack had occurred. Moscow did not remain silent. Alexei Chipa, first deputy chairman of the State Duma's Committee on International Affairs, publicly dissected the sudden shift in Washington's stance. From the outset, he said, he had pointed to the involvement of Western intelligence services in the thwarted attack on Novgorod. He sharpened the accusation with a single line that landed like a political hammer. The intelligence agencies involved are primarily the CIA. Hours later, the CIA responded by asserting that, according to its information, there had been no attack. Chipa's reply was devastating in its simplicity. There was an attack. The emphasis was unmistakable. Once again, the uncomfortable question surfaced. Who was really pulling the strings? Chipa stopped short of claiming that the US president personally ordered an attempt on Putin's life, but he made one thing clear. Without Western intelligence support, such an operation would have been impossible. In Russian accounts, Washington's shadow appears repeatedly. Regarding the attack on Putin's residence near Novgorod, Russian sources introduced a measured note of caution. There is no definitive proof, they said, that the United States was directly involved. Ukraine, however, undoubtedly was. And for that, as the Russian leader reportedly warned in a conversation with Trump, the United States will ultimately have to answer. Russian society now waits, tense and uncertain, for a retaliatory strike. No one knows what form it will take or when it will come. One thing officials insist is clear: the regime in Kyiv will tremble. What do you think about the possibility that Washington used Kyiv as a proxy to test the limits of a direct strike against Russia's core leadership? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. The available data converge on a minimum common denominator. The drone was launched from Ukrainian territory, and its destination was an installation inside the presidential residence. What remains unresolved is the degree of coordination with Washington, an issue Russian analysts continue to highlight. From their perspective, Caracas and Novgorod belong to the same chain. At one end, the seizure of Maduro and the consolidation of control over Venezuelan crude reserves. At the other, a failed attempt to physically harm the Russian head of state during a major national holiday. Despite what Moscow describes as a red line crossed by the Kyiv leadership, Russia did not suspend peace talks or fall into what it sees as a deliberate provocation. It did not respond by leveling symbolic streets or decaying corridors of power, as commentators recalled. For now, the question remains open. Did Washington seek to eliminate Putin, or did it push events to the edge by using Kyiv as a battering ram? Some Russian outlets strongly suggest the former. Official documents, for their part, certify only the attack itself. What is beyond dispute is that Russia detected the strike and destroyed it in midair. Before the final reckoning, another question hangs heavily over the geopolitical landscape. If such an operation failed once, will it be attempted again? And at what cost to global stability? Give us your opinion in the comment box below. In conclusion, the alleged attempt to strike the Russian president is not merely a sensational accusation, it represents a profound escalation in international tensions. From our assessment, the events in Novgorod and Caracas are interconnected expressions of a broader struggle for power, resources, and narrative dominance. Historically, attacks on heads of state have marked decisive turning points, from Sarajevo in 1914 to the covert operations of the Cold War. In this case, Russia emerges as the immediate tactical victor, having neutralized the threat and exposed what it views as Western duplicity. The beneficiaries, in Moscow's view, are those who thrive on destabilization and control over strategic resources, particularly energy. The losers extend far beyond individual leaders. Global security, diplomatic norms, and civilian populations forced to live under the shadow of escalation. Whether or not Washington directly ordered such actions, the perception alone reshapes diplomacy, hardens alliances, and narrows the space for de-escalation. Novgorod may ultimately be remembered not as the site of a failed strike, but as a moment when the world realized how close it came to crossing an irreversible line. Now it's your turn. If this analysis challenged your assumptions about power, conflict, and diplomacy, share your perspective. Do you believe this was a reckless gamble by Washington, or a warning shot that backfired?